Conklin and Company with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Today on the program, the winter of 2014. It's been a brutal one, as you well know. The impact on the city of Toledo. What's in Mayor Collins' budget plan to address the crumbling roads? That and more in Take 3 with Ignacio Messina of the Blade. Also stepping up for the Polar Bears, the big push for Woodward High School to get them over the top to get a long overdue football stadium. But first, human trafficking, the sex trade in Northwest Ohio. Unfortunately, at the center of it, this a haven for that activity with so many victims. Our Washington bureau chief working on a series of special reports tackling the issue. Here's my conversation earlier this week with Jacqueline Policastro. And through the magic of television with Jacqueline Policastro in studio now. Normally, Jacqueline, we see you in Washington. You lead our Washington bureau, but it's good to see you here in Toledo.
Thanks for having me.
Working on a piece about human trafficking. And people who live in Toledo, Northwest Ohio, know that all too well, that this area really is a hub for that. Tell us about your story coming up in the next week and a half or so, and why you decided to tackle it.
Well, you know, I was working with Senator Portman, and he talked to me about this new piece of legislation that he had coming out about missing children. And I started looking at the bill, and it was really bothering me because I was looking at the amount of children that go missing that wind up being involved in sex trafficking. And a couple months went by, I started studying more about it, and I couldn't leave it alone. And so that's why I came here to Toledo to talk to people in the community to figure out where can we make an impact as journalists, where can we tell this story, and where can we figure out where the weak links are. And so that's why I'm here.
And we have heard for a long time, for years, about how this is a hub or a haven for the human trafficking problem here. But what kind of numbers are we looking at? Just tangible numbers, so we really can point to that and say this is how serious this problem is.
Well, I'm looking specifically now at something more unique than just the problem of sex trafficking. I'm looking at how many children go missing and how many of those wind up being involved in sex trafficking. Across the nation, about 300,000 children go missing, and we now know that about 100,000 of them wind up being involved in sex trafficking. And I was talking to someone this week who put it in terms like this. If you watch Ohio State football, think about the entire stadium full of children involved in sex trafficking. Yeah. And that's just not something that we can turn our backs on, close our eyes, I know, when we look at. And that's a serious number.
And who's out there? Is it people of all socioeconomic backgrounds who are getting these girls involved in this? People of all walks of life, professional gamut as well. Who are we talking about?
You know, it's a really interesting question because when I first started studying this, like many people probably do, they assume or they think that this is happening only maybe in a bad neighborhood. Sure. But it's not. It's happening in all kinds of socioeconomic places in our community. Doesn't matter if you're on the top of the level or on the bottom of the level. Another thing that shocked me is that I'm learning that children are being picked up in places where you, as parents, think they're safe. Libraries, the mall, places around schools, and that the traffickers who are, you know, talking to them and coercing them aren't scary men that you see
It's
under
not just the rest stop or the truck stop.
It's happening in our community in real places, and a lot of the time it's a woman that's approaching the girls in order to get them to become involved and
gain their trust. And
everyone I've talked to has basically said it's children who need attention or are missing something in their life, and that's how they become prey.
You've been here for a couple of days. Who are you talking to to formulate this piece that's going to be airing here?
It's been a crazy few days. I've talked to two former FBI agents right now who are trying to work to get approval to participate in the community to help find these missing young girls. They have a wealth of knowledge and expertise, but there's red tape, and they're fighting that, and I'm working with them to try to get that message out there to see where they can become more involved. I've also met with victims of sex trafficking in our community. One woman, her neck is cut with scars from when she was being trafficked and someone actually tried to kill her. I mean, these are just real life people living in our community that are trying to turn around their own lives and working with victims now. I've also met with about a dozen people in our community who are working to combat this, to work with young girls and boys as well who are affected. But again, my message here is trying to transcend just the fact that, yes, we have a problem, but part of the problem is that we're not tracking these missing young women mostly, and maybe we can do a better job doing that.
You've talked with Senator Portman, Senator Brown. Teresa Fetter has long pushed for tougher legislation to crack down on this problem here at the state level. Do we know why this area is such a problem? is a haven for this activity.
Yeah, well, first I want to mention, you mentioned Teresa. She has a new House bill. It's called House Bill 130 that she's working to push new legislation that should help some victims. And Senators Portman and Brown are working on legislation as well right now, this missing children. But what I've learned from talking to experts is that part of the problem is that we're in an area where highways kind of intersect.
Right.
And, you know, youth have fallen prey to that. And one of the toughest things is that when you take a young child out of where they're from and then move them somewhere else, they don't know where they are. They don't have a lot of options. So that's why it's so important that when they go missing in our area that has this problem, that we know people are coming in and taking our children from our area and bringing them other places to be trafficked, that we take a look at the fact that once they go missing, we only have a few days, truly a few days, that's what experts are telling us, to be able to find them. So our community has the problem because of where it stands in the nation. That's what I've been told by experts.
All right. In closing here, as your piece airs, what message would you have in talking to Senators Portman, Brown, Teresa Fetter at the state level? I mean, what message would you have for parents who have daughters, sons, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old? I mean, what is the message of Jacqueline Policastro's story?
I say pay attention. The biggest thing I've heard from every expert is that the reason that these young girls and young men go missing and often become involved in sex trafficking is because they're lacking one person in their life who is listening to them, who is paying attention to what they're doing, and who is giving them love and attention. And those types of children usually don't run away. So be there for your child or a child in the community that you know and ask questions. If you see something that doesn't seem right, ask, because that's the only way we're going to be able to prevent this from happening.
Okay, and your story, your special series will air the week after next here on 13 ABC. When you go back to Washington, though, in a lot of politics, it could be business as usual, back to the political arena. What can people look forward to from Jacqueline Policastro on a political front as the bureau chief in Washington? What are you looking at?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, this issue is taking up a lot of my time right now, and it's one that I plan to continue to follow in Washington. So that's one thing. Then, you know, we're really looking at a lot of the fiscal issues that are being broken down right now when it comes to budgets and when it comes to debt ceiling and those types of issues and what they mean for our community, because the bottom line is they're affecting everyone on the ground here. And that's really what's taking up a lot of our time right now.
And midterm elections coming up. So, you know, maybe some legislators will be more available to talk.
And I'm a girl who loves to cover campaigns, so I'll be there for that for sure.
Jacqueline Policastro, 13
Thank
ABC.
you.
Washington Bureau Chief. Once again, look for her story.
Thanks for your time.
Coming up next week, right here on 13 ABC, the problem of human trafficking right here in Northwest Ohio. And we'll be back on Conklin & Company right after this.